Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Thursday, February 5th, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. I've got so many great articles for you today that we'll delve into, and I know you're going to enjoy each and every one of them. My first article, though, is very, very important. It's out of the Associated Press. I see no one talking about this. I have no idea why that is. Now, while unbeknownst to some, one of the most alarming and formidable issues now facing the West, and really the entire world now, folks, is not the economy, it's not inflation, it's not AI, it's not the protests that we're seeing all across the country, but it's this expiring of the New START treaty between the United States and Russia right now. Effective at midnight today in Moscow, this treaty is now null and void. And I find this troubling for many reasons. One, it allows for the proliferation of nuclear weapons, its technology, missiles, the amount of launchers that can be used in nuclear development is now all on the table. Anybody can do whatever they want. Now, this has been a slow push for quite some time now. It didn't just start with President Trump. We know that he took us out of the INF Treaty back in 2019. We know that the anti-ballistic missiles treaty between the United States and Russia was null and void in 2002 with George W. Bush. But now we've got nothing on the table, folks. Nothing. We could do whatever we want. Russia can do whatever they want. And I hate to tell you this, but Russia's technology is far superior than ours. That's just the way it is. I tell it to you how it is. They are far more advanced than we are in terms of nuclear technology. And, of course, their ballistic missiles as well. But arms control is now officially dead. And whoever is advising President Trump this is a great idea should be fired in my estimation. There is no more promotion of peace through strength in this. This threatens the livelihood of every single person in America right now, and in Russia, and across the world for that matter. Since 1972, the height of the Cold War, arms control was put into place bilaterally by the United States and the then Soviet Union. Now Russia, of course, is what we call it now. We wanted to cap and reduce the scope of these special categories of these nuclear weapons that we're continuing to develop and their delivery systems. Why? Because we didn't want a nuclear holocaust throughout the world. We wanted to stop that concept from happening. Now, the latest of these treaties that were signed between the two countries is the New START Treaty, which, again, I told you expired today. It was signed in 2010 by President Barack Obama and then President Dmitry Medvedev. And this was the latter of the succession of the various arms control treaties with Russia. It capped the deployed strategic warheads at 1,550 per side. So, again, it was limiting the production of these. And it also limited the type of deployed and non-deployed launchers and bombers. So, for example, a deployed launcher is actively loaded. That means it's ready to go for use. So this would be like an ICBM silo with a missile inside of it. Or it could be a nuclear submarine with a missile in its tube. And again, a non-deployed would obviously mean that the launcher or the bomber are empty, it's in maintenance, or that missile for it is in storage, or it's converted for any type of non-nuclear use. Now, this treaty also included arms and weapons inspections and verifications on site from both sides. So, for example, we could go to Moscow in a plant where they're producing these and check to make sure, for example, they're not producing more than the 1,550, and vice versa. They can come to the United States, they could check that. That's now over as well. So we're entering really perilous times, I'd have to say. None of this is positive. None of this is good. But, this is significant because for the first time since 1972, we have absolutely no binding limits on either side. And as I just told you, their technology greatly exceeds ours. So we've got to be very, very careful what we do now in the future. And I want to just read this to you, too. This is a post on X from Deputy Chair of the Russian Security Council, former President, former Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. And what he wrote was a bit startling to me, and maybe you'll agree with this, too. He writes, "That's it. For the first time since 1972, Russia, the former USSR, and the United States have no treaty limiting strategic nuclear forces. SALT 1, SALT 2, START 1, START 2, SORT, New START, all in the past." And then under this text above, it says, it shows a picture of a zombie from the Game of Thrones, and it says, "Winter is coming," and he's got his arms kind of emoting out, kind of, to the sides. And, I think of a nuclear winter, and that means, folks, that there's just, pollution in the skies, there's no sunlight, crops are devastated, civilization is dying. Is this really the talks we want to have right now in 2026? Why does it seem like we're regressing in terms of maintaining civil society? That's what it seems like to me. Doesn't it seem like that to you? This isn't pushing us towards any peace. It's not pushing us towards negotiations. Why would President Trump allow this to expire? I have no idea. Again, I pray there's never any type of use of nuclear weapons in the future again. But Russia's response to, again, our refusal to commit to anything limiting these arms must be giving them great cause for concern as well. They're not happy about this. President Putin, by the way, whom the West always labels as a dictator, as a tyrant, said that he would like to extend this treaty back in 2025, offering this to the Trump administration, saying that it would only work if the United States acted in a similar manner in other works of a mutual cooperation. That's what it is. President Trump says nothing about this. And again, they met many times. These comments were then passed over to President Trump last October, and his response was, "Sounds like a good idea to me." But he never followed up with it. So whoever's advising President Trump clearly doesn't have peace in mind, because that's what we're pushing further and further away from. And by the way, just so we understand this, even if at the current capacity, which is capped at the, like I told you, 1,550 nuclear warheads, the 700 different types of launching devices, that alone, if they were to ignite all these at one time, this could cause global devastation. It could destroy the entire planet. It'd be uninhabitable. Just so we're clear on this. And now we've taken all the safeguards out and said, do what you want to do. We'll do what we want to do. You do what you want to do. And the big question is, and nobody can answer this, is why? Why do we need this? Are we planning for something that we're going to use nuclear weapons for? It's a very, very shocking thing to see this trajectory that we're on right now. And of course, we know that our status of being number one, as the number one superpower, is in jeopardy right now. We're seeing China on the rise, Russia on the rise, India on the rise. And again, I can't think of any other reason why we would go in this direction, folks. It makes no sense to me. And by the way, President Trump ran as a peace candidate. It's the only reason, well, one of the reasons why he won. People had enough of these wars Biden was prolonging. Trump promised change. He said the war in Gaza should be solved before he even takes office. Before he's sworn in on January 20th, that war should be over with. He said that he would end the Russian-Ukraine war within 24 hours. That's what we heard. And we loved it. We wanted this. We want these wars to end. But none of it ever happened. It never materialized. These wars are now ongoing. And then, of course, instead of us promoting peace, we find ourselves that we're bombing several other various countries as well. Bombing Yemen. We spent $1 billion dropping bombs on their infrastructure. Didn't even stop them from, again, firing missiles into Israel. We were bombing Somalia over 100 times. Syria, bombing them, even though I guess we're now buddies with the now Al-Qaeda, president of the failed state of Syria. The guy who chops off heads, hands, they gave him a suit and they told us that, he's now this wonderful leader we're all excited about. We're bombing Syria, though, too. We're bombing Nigeria, bombing Venezuela. We know this. That resulted in the deaths of over 100 civilians in the dead of night. The bombing of the alleged drug boats in the Caribbean, the Eastern Pacific, without any form of due process, void of anything constitutionally and international law, simply not recognized in any of that. And then, of course, we have the bombing of Iran's nuclear sites back in June, right after we asked for negotiations. And they were going to give us every single thing we wanted. Yet we greenlit Israel to go in and bomb. Then we bombed afterwards to end the 12-day war. Again, under zero pretext. Zero pretext we did this. So it seems to me, and this is the path that we're on, we are continuing to seek new wars. We're finding new ways to create these tensions that are unnecessary right now. And if this war happens, and by that I mean the war between the United States and Iran, which seems to be heating up very closely, we're seeing more and more resources going into that region. I believe you will see a greater regional war as a result of this. And as the New START is now ineffective, it's no longer, it's now null and void, let's all remember that Russia and Iran are allies. Iran is a member of BRICS. Both countries trade military arms to one another in some capacity. Now, Russia has not committed to putting boots on the ground, but it has given Iran Russian attack helicopters. It's given them ground aerial targets. It's given them air-to-ground missiles. So they've given them quite a bit of things they can use to defend themselves. I'm not saying we can't do harm to Iran, but I'm saying that they can also do harm to us. And one of the things that we need to consider now that this New START is over, we can produce whatever we want, whenever we want. Can they start providing them with greater advanced technology in their ballistic missile systems? Can they give them more hypersonic missiles? We know last time in the 12-day war, they used 2 to 3 of them. 2 to 3 of them, which were very approximate in which they hit as far as targets go. If Russia starts providing them with types of arms now that can hit our U.S. carrier ships, for example, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and sink it, that would be catastrophic, not only for us, but that would just, again, cause great devastation. God only knows what our response to that would be. This is not going to be some stealth attack like what we saw in Venezuela. Iran is the size of Western Europe. 93 million people live there, and they have the arms to stave us off. They can hit us where we are right now. And they've said this, I'll say it back to you. They said if any type of attack, any type of missile, bomb, whatever, you name it, hits Iran's soil, it's a war. It's not going to be what we saw last time. You bomb this warehouse, we'll bomb this warehouse, make sure everyone's out, we'll do it in an hour. That's not the way it's going to be this time. It is now going to be an all-out war. They will hit all the U.S. military bases throughout the region. They will hit Israel. They will hit oil fields in various countries all throughout the Middle East. They will hit their refineries. They will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That will create a global catastrophe as far as trade goes. And of course, really it'll collapse the economies in many parts of Europe and Asia alike. Does President Trump want to be remembered for that, by the way? Is this the way he wants to go down as his, final term as president? As being the president that caused this type of global devastation? Brings us closer to nuclear war? Again, I can't see him as wanting this. But this is the path he seems to be taking us on, and he seems totally fine with it. So we're going to allow nuclear proliferation? We're going to allow war now? Again, I don't understand this for the life of me, folks. Really what this comes down to, and I'll just close with this. We continue to push for global hegemony. The Wolfowitz Doctrine. U.S. global hegemony at all costs, take down any type of foreign adversaries that get in our way from being the number one world superpower. And again, it does seem like this is the path we're on right now. Iran threatens us in some way, so we're going to make sure we attack them. Israel wants us to attack, so we're going to go in and attack them. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand this. This is not conducive to a better society for the United States, for our trade, for our economy. And God knows how much this entire war will cost if we're, round the clock bombing them for God knows how long. But this, folks, to me, it serves as a reminder that we are choosing to avoid and abandon peace for the profits and the spoils of war. That's the way I see this. Maybe you do too. I can't find any other reason why we are going into this conflict, and we should be heating things up. One thing I will say about all this, though, that is somewhat positive as far as this treaty goes, is that Washington suggested any future arms treaty should it also involve not only Russia, but China as well. Now, that sounds fine to me, but again, I don't know why you would let this agreement go out. Why would you do this? Why would you let it expire? Why not bring China into it? Russia and China are allies. This could be something we could negotiate. Instead, we let it just go out, giving both parties time to, again, create whatever they want, however much of what they want. Now, Russia has retorted back and said, well, okay, you want China involved? We want the UK and France involved in Europe to also be in this too. Hey, I'm fine with all that, by the way, just so we're clear on this. If we can get more countries into non-proliferation treaties, hey, I'm happy with that. I am. But the way things are going right now, with the way this possible war that, again, I'm told will happen at some point, is going, it doesn't seem likely that really anyone is going to trust the United States moving forward. Especially after what happened last June when we were supposed to negotiate with Iran, and of course we ended up bombing them and killing their lead negotiator. And killing citizens as well, and totally just taking a different path from what we said we would. I don't know who would trust the United States moving forward. That being said, I do pray for peace. I hope you do too. And we'll see what happens as a result of these meetings that are set to take place. Which brings me to the next point. In the BBC, it says here that the United States and Iran now agreed to hold nuclear talks in Oman on Friday. So I like this. Again, I like negotiations. I like diplomacy. I like unilateralism. We need this in this world. This stops us from going to wars. But here's the problem with this. Our demands going into this are not going to be met because Iran has already said they are not going to move forward with them. We've asked about curbing their ballistic missile program and their development, putting a halt to support any type of proxies in the Middle East. That would be Hamas, that would be Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as the production of any enriched uranium. Now, this is the latest part of it. That's ridiculous. Every single developed country in the world has some form of enriched uranium for example, medical purposes or what have you. To tell them that they can't have any just seems a bit ridiculous to me. I don't think they're going to agree to it. I think it's a dead offer to them. It's dead on arrival. President Trump said no nuclear weapons, and we fully agree on that. Well, again, they've been telling us this for years. They've been telling us for a long time now. They're not developing nuclear weapons. Anytime the IAEA has gone in, they've said, no, they're not building weapons. Even Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, says Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. So why do we keep listening to rhetoric from people like Bibi Netanyahu that it says, okay, Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon next month, next week. They're at this level of enriched uranium. It's going to happen. They've been saying this for 30 years. So why do we continue to go down this path of they're doing this right now and it's going to happen right now. We've got to bomb their nuclear sites, which I thought we obliterated. That was the terminology that was used. We obliterated their entire nuclear facilities. Therefore, I thought the risk was now over. Now, all of a sudden, they're back up and running and ready to go again. Now, Iran has insisted that its nuclear program is entirely peaceful, and they've denied seeking the development of nuclear weapons. They have fatwas, is what they're called, that are issued from the government that say they're not going to be building nuclear weapons. That's what they've said. Again, I'm just telling you what they're saying. But Trump said in an interview with NBC recently that Iran was going to have a nuclear weapon within 1 month before he ordered the U.S. air and missile strikes on 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities during the 12-day war between Israel and Iran last June. Again, there's no basis to that. None whatsoever. That they were building a nuclear weapon or that close to building one, for that matter. Now, I will grant to the president that, yes, they were enriching uranium at a high level. They were enriching at 60%, which gives anyone looking in the notion that, hey, yeah, they could build a nuclear weapon. And maybe that's the mentality they wanted to be presented. I don't know. But this idea that they had a nuclear weapon, they were going to build one, we've been hearing that for decades, folks. I found an article a while back from, I think, 1984, talking about how it was right around the corner Iran was going to have a nuclear weapon built and how this would be devastating for the United States. I don't see it, folks. And any of the information I could find, I can't see any evidence that they're building a nuclear weapon right now. I just don't see it. And by the way, they've been the ones that have come forward and said, listen, we want to produce trade with you. We want to have good relations. And for some reason, we're the ones that are saying we want to go to war with them now, unless you bow down to our demands. So one can only hope that this meeting tomorrow results in something positive. Maybe, for example, Trump will allow a certain level of enrichment and they'll agree to that. I don't see them, though, abandoning the support for Hezbollah or their other allies in the region. I really don't see that happening as well. And by the way, same thing goes with their ballistic missile program. Trump said they have to curb it and let them be sitting ducks for another Israeli strike. I can't see them following through on that as well. Maybe, for example, they would, I don't see this happening, but maybe they would limit their production of the enriched uranium and the ballistic missiles that they have in their stockpiles. I don't know. Maybe Iran says, no, we're not doing any of this. You can check us for nuclear weapons all you want. They've said that in the past, but we're simply not going to be following through on any of these other demands. And that's where we are, folks. That's where we are. We can pray that Witkoff can negotiate a good deal, and we could remove our fleet from the Northern Arabian Sea and hopefully avoid this all-out conflict that is right around the corner, it seems. Anyone that I follow that is very versed on this says that at some point, though, we will be attacking Iran. I tend to trust them. Again, I pray that this doesn't happen. I hope I'm wrong on this. But this will be devastating, folks. And it'll be devastating for our economy, too, by the way. Trump needs to focus on America. America first. That means focusing on what we're doing here at home. Now, this article I have also in the Washington Times suggests that a House bill is now going to be passed to accelerate the mining of vital minerals. So, in other words, they're going to be talking about the development, including rare earth minerals, hard rock minerals, to end this kind of resilience we have on foreign suppliers such as China. Now, this is good. Obviously, it moves in the right direction. And the Critical Mineral Dominance Act passed 224 to 195, with even 10 Democrats joining Republicans. Again, this is something that we should be focusing on. This is something we should be building. This is our future right here. Whether we want to admit it or not, AI is going to be the future. Now, Representative Pete Stauber of Minnesota said there is no reason for the United States to be dependent on other countries, including foreign adversarial nations, for our critical mineral future. Nobody does it better than the United States. Well, first of all, we're not doing it. That's the problem. But we are relying heavily on other countries to produce and refine these rare minerals by and large. Now, one thing I will say, despite the excavating and extraction for rare earths, unless we, as the United States, open up facilities that can refine them on American soil, it means nothing. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, if you do not own what you are refining and someone else is doing it for you, that means they own the production. They decide if they're going to trade with you. They'll decide if they're even going to refine it for you. That puts us in a very sticky situation, I think, especially with a country like China that is refining now 90% of all the rare earth minerals worldwide, which again means they control and have access to all of it. And by the way, just so we're clear on this, right now they spend about $20 billion a year in refining that just keeps our military functioning. What would happen if they pulled the plug on that? What if they said, you know what, no more, we're not going to do this for you. You'll have to go elsewhere. And by the way, there's very few other countries that refine. So that's another big problem. What needs to happen, beyond the drilling, behind the extracting, is refining in the United States. Here's something I want to share with you, though. This Lynas Rare Earths of Australia, they wanted to actually use their raw ore, and they wanted to build a plant in Texas to begin the refinement. But thanks to our wonderful Congress, thanks to our legislation that passed through, the red tape alone in America, just to get through that, think about the regulations, think about the environmental woes and what have you, the plant development was now halted. It was stalled. And we're still there today. So this is going to be a result of, who we elect to these offices. And we need to, again, take control of not only the mining of it, but we also need to take control of the refining of it. We are mining in several places in the country, but that all goes and gets shipped to China, who controls it. And if we find ourselves in a situation where, let's say, we're going back and forth with Russia, and China steps in and says, you know what, we're not going to refine your rare earths anymore if you're going to continue to act like this, or put on a certain number of tariffs, or what have you. It doesn't matter what it is. That's devastating for the United States because we're relying on somebody else. We're not dependent on that. Let's all understand that. And by the way, I want to share this with you too. We talk about NATO, we talk about trade, we talk about our European partners. Norway recently, several years ago, off their shores in the ocean, they discovered some of the largest rare earth deposits in Europe, in the entire continent. Now, the United States should be negotiating with projects like this to invest in these things, rather than, of course, bombing Iran for Israel. Imagine the wealth and security that could bring the United States, especially if we're refining here in the United States. Other countries want to come to us instead of China. Can you imagine that? It would be massive, folks. It would be a major win because, again, I told you before, this is the future. Right now, China is leading that future. India is second. We're after that. So, again, if we don't get serious about owning the refining, or if we, obviously, in America, we're dependent on other nations to do that, then we're not serious about this. And it will obviously allow China to be the new world superpower, which is exactly what they want to do. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want to give this up? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. This status of ours of being number one will simply go away. And by the way, just so we're clear on all this, I want to make this very well known. This technology in the rare earths is in so many different things that we use. Cell phones, hard drives, hybrid engines, lasers, medical devices, televisions now. And of course our high-tech military weaponry systems all contain rare earth minerals. And we're sitting here going, well, we don't know if we want to do this. We've got this regulation, we got that regulation. China doesn't have these. China is going forward. They're investing in this right now. So we've got to ask ourselves, are we going to be sidelined? And again, I'm not saying we need to dirty our atmosphere or anything like that, or pollute our waters or what have you. We have a lot of ingenuity in this country. We can prevent all that. But we have to ask ourselves a serious question. Are we going to let China or India or any of these other countries that are starting to produce more rare earths, refine them, are we going to allow them to take control of this market, which is going to be massive in the future? That's what we have to ask ourselves. And if we decide, hey, we're going to let someone else do it, then, well, you can forget about being the world superpower. After that, it won't even matter what you do with Iran, President Trump. It'll be over. This right here should be Trump's main focus. He should have already been focusing on this. And yet we're in foreign conflict after foreign conflict after foreign conflict. It doesn't make any sense. So one can only pray that President Trump really gets to work on this, that he works with his administration, he works with Congress on this while he has a majority, and they actually get meaningful legislation passed so we can produce here in the United States. That, in and of itself, would just be very, very a big win for President Trump moving forward. And again, you have to look at what these Democrats are saying, though. The Democrats are going to stall this 100%. For example, you have this Jared Huffman, a Democrat out of California. He's on the coast in Northern California. And he called the bill a corporate giveaway, right? And he said that the environmental safeguards Mr. Stauber mentioned are also under attack by Republicans and the administration. Well, okay. We have to decide. Are we just going to let China do this? Or are we going to step in and say, we're going to do this as well? In fact, we could probably do this better. Now, think about someone who wants to invest, like, for example, in Australia, this Linus Rare Earths. Are they going to say, you know what, we're going to invest in the United States, but wait a minute. They might close this down after 5 years when the Democrats get back in power. Who knows? Or another time a Democratic president comes in, they might shut us right down. They might pull the funding, which, again, the Pentagon brought up a lot of money for in this, too. Because, again, they have high stakes in this because they're creating the rare earths necessary for missiles. So we've got to ask ourselves, how are we going to look to the world? How are we going to get people to invest in this in the United States? It's simply not going to be this back and forth like what we're seeing this rhetoric here. And for me, I'm all about a cleaner environment. I am. I don't want to destroy any planet, any part of the planet. I don't want to do any of that. But we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we going to let the other side win? Are we going to abandon this entire process? And it looks like the Democrats are on that. So that gives the notion that, hey, if I'm investing, I'm not going to go to the United States. I'm going to go to China. I'm going to go to India, where the green light's been set. It's going. They're going to be investing in this nonstop for quite some time because they know this is the future. And you got to look at other companies too, by the way. You got Google, General Motors, Boeing, all want to get involved in this as well. So you have lots of investment that can be done. It's manufacturing, so you know that they're going to be good paying jobs. And again, we have the ingenuity in this country to make sure that everything is done according to the environment. We're not going to abandon things like, obviously, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act. We don't have to abandon these. We just have to find a way to ensure that none of that is harmed. We can do this, folks. We're the United States. We can do anything. And if we just follow the notion, well, this is all for the corporations, the environment's going to be at risk, we're just not going to do this. Then we're going to lose this AI race, and that's just the way it's going to be. Folks, I want to go on to another article from Paul Craig Roberts. This is a very interesting article, and no one else is talking about this as well. He posted this just yesterday. And he says, Florida makes gold and silver official means of payment. I really enjoy this too, obviously, because as you know, I'm not one for the digital currency that's taking place right now. But he gives a little background here about, obviously, the history of gold throughout, obviously, our country and even the world here. And he brings up many good points. And he starts out by saying, throughout history, gold and silver have been the means of payments, right? They've always been used. They never lose their value. He starts out by saying the Roman legions were paid in silver coins, the denarii. Estates were purchased for gold back in the Roman Empire. He says paper money appeared originally as a receipt for gold holdings. Said if gold was a large amount, people could get their gold in vaults of goldsmiths, and they would write notes to the goldsmith to release the payment of the transaction to their business associates in order to pay their bills. So what happened was goldsmiths learned that few ever claimed the physical possession of their own gold. It would just sit inside these vaults. Instead, they were using these written notes. In effect, they were checks to transfer this ownership. Okay, we do this in our society today. So the goldsmiths became really the first bankers, knowing that they could lend out gold in their vaults that few ever came for. We see this today. Moreover, neither did those who borrowed the gold take possession physically, and this was really the origin of fractional reserve banking. That's just the way that things worked out. So I want you to think back. Obviously, most people listening can't remember this, but there was a time when you had a legal note, right? And it would say, this is worth $1 of gold. And you could go and trade that dollar bill in for $1 worth of gold, or $5, or $20, or $100, or whatever it was. Same thing goes with silver. And this is how the United States currency was up until about, 1934. We'll get into that momentarily. So, as a result of this, what happened in the 30s was that when President Roosevelt came in, he decided he was going to confiscate all the gold from the American population. So no gold was going to be in circulation anymore. He, in fact, made it a law that you had to turn in all your gold, and that would have been the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, which, again, prohibited this ownership of gold inside the country. And it was done to really devalue the currency during the Great Depression. We see that gold prices go up, and we see that the U.S. dollar begins to lose its value. You can go look at charts and see that it really starts to begin devaluing at this time in the 1930s. So what he was expecting to do, he wanted to make the prices of goods and the wages of workers to rise as a result of this. And again, by rising the price of gold from $20.67 an ounce to $35 an ounce, you saw the value of gold holdings rose by 69%. So it increases the Federal Reserve's bank sheets, which then meant it could increase the M1 money supply, which meant that you can print more dollars out, right? That was one of his big statements. I remember this too in school. They said this. They said, Roosevelt said, the more dollars going around, the better, because people are spending money. We've got to get people to spend money. So we'll make this job program. We'll make that job program. We'll do this. We'll do that. The more dollars going around, the better. And unfortunately for FDR, that never actually worked. And it did not end the Great Depression. It didn't even recover the economy throughout the 1930s, nor did it even reduce unemployment. But you know what did? World War II. That solved the problem. Obviously taking 12 million men out of the workforce and sending them to Europe and Asia, that obviously helped end the Great Depression as we know it. And then, of course, we have the result of that. We have Europe that needs to be rebuilt, so we're doing a lot of trading. And then you have the dollar come in as the world reserve currency, which allowed the United States to grow very much so. And again, following World War II, we have the Bretton Woods Agreement, which gave the United States dollar the role as the world reserve currency. So this meant that the U.S. debt could, in the form of treasury bonds, become the reserves for the world central banks. So the United States government was able to pay its bills by issuing debt as a U.S. Treasury debt. And what happened as a result of this, you're using more dollar bills. Countries are paying in U.S. dollars. There was a demand for it. We hear about the petrodollar, things of that nature. So the Bretton Woods system, this foreign central banking, could redeem their holdings of U.S. treasuries for gold. It was only up until the 1970s that this was in effect. And once the U.S. debt can no longer be exchanged for gold, What do we start to see again? In the 1970s, we see inflation go out of control because now the currency is not backed by anything anymore because now the Fed can just print whatever the hell it wants. That's a big problem. So that brings me to what is taking place in the state of Florida right now. The Florida legislature now began to move their legislation to enact their prior approval for gold and silver coins to be legal tender now in the state of Florida. It's amazing. And this is going to be a huge blow to central bank digital currency, which they're still behind the scenes trying to push right now. So this legislation would exempt gold and silver coins from sales tax in Florida. And again, it also means that within Florida, they can also have means of payment independent of digital money created by other governments for the purpose of controlling the population. And we've talked about this on previous shows, social credit scores and what have you. But this just totally upends everything that these foreign banks, these foreign governments are really doing right now. And what I see as a result of this, unless, of course, the United States in general or other states adopt the legalization of gold and silver, again, as legal tender, Floridians would be able to, they wouldn't be able to make payments out of state. It would have to be an economy unto itself, is what I'm trying to say here. So again, producing all of its own needs. And obviously, gold doesn't lose its value. Gold is always going to be used as a currency, as it has been throughout history. And I find this really fascinating that Ron DeSantis is looking into this and considering doing this, that we could actually get a legal means of real currency in Americans' pockets to buy things. You're no longer just passing an IOU out. That's what these dollar bills are now. They're just IOUs. The banks shift around the money. But to actually have gold in your pocket, silver in your pocket, is a major game changer. I don't know that the federal government would appreciate this. And obviously, the tyrants in Washington probably will establish some sort of martial law inside Florida to, again, prevent the use of real money in the place of this digital era of money that we find ourselves in that has absolutely no real existence. Again, they're just numbers on a screen. So I'm really fascinated with what Ron DeSantis is doing with this. This is, again, very, very interesting. And it would take us back to a time when America was far more affordable and far more profitable, too. Just so we're all understanding that. So really interesting that DeSantis is considering doing this. I really find this really a good step in the right direction, and I can only hope other Republican states would follow suit. I could see that happening in that entire region, too, by the way. They see what's happening in Florida, it happens in Georgia. And then it happens throughout the American South. Then it happens in Texas. Then it moves over to Arizona. Then it goes up into the the Midwest. That could be something that is actual, that might save the country. That might save the currency too, by the way. Who knows? And of course, we're seeing gold now skyrocketing. It's at, all-time highs right now, despite being down a little bit today. We'll talk about gold tomorrow on our weekly economic report, but it's really remarkable to see what is taking place with happening in Florida and the idea of, again, paying in gold yet again. That would be remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Let's move on to President Trump. This is out of Breitbart. It says Trump oversees the lowest level of illegal immigration at the border in over 50 years. This area is one of the big areas where President Trump is extremely strong, and I'm very happy to see a lot of this. But what they figured out was that in fiscal year 2024, President Joe Biden's last full fiscal year in office, there was more than 1.5 million illegal aliens that were apprehended. That means they came in contact with Border Patrol at the southern border. As well as fiscal year 2023, more than 2 million apprehended, and in fiscal year 2022, reaching 2.2 million. Now, these are all catch and releases, by the way. We don't know the full scale of people that just circumvented Border Patrol or didn't even come in contact with them, or the known or unknown gotaways that come into this country. It's estimated that anywhere between 12 and 20 million entered the United States in those 4 years. But what we're seeing right now is that in 2025, The total was the lowest in any fiscal year since 1970. And again, this is going back to historical data from the Border Patrol, according to Pew Research Center. And this is, again, another boost to credit of President Trump in shutting down the border. But what they found was that fewer than 10,000 illegal aliens had been apprehended each month, the lowest level of monthly illegal immigration in over 25 years. Again, it's very good to see this, that this is stopping. There's a halt to this. It was out of control during the Biden years. It'll probably continue to be that way when another Democrat comes into office. But one thing I want to share with you, while these numbers are great, and again, while I'm very happy about this, we're not seeing any more catch and release. That's, again, positive. We're seeing a much greater Border Patrol presence, obviously, on our southern border. And we should be doing that on our northern border as well. But it's more difficult for illegal aliens to enter when there's this presence there to circumvent them from entering the United States. But here's one thing I want to say to you. When President Trump first ran in 2016, he ran that we're going to build a wall. Well, we never finished building that wall. So let me ask you this. Since taking office in 2025, how much of that border wall has actually been built? Only about, I'm told, 78 miles of new border wall has been built since Trump took office. We have a 1,954-mile southern border with Mexico. 1,000 miles of that contain absolutely zero physical barrier between us and Mexico. And if that is not closely guarded, if it doesn't have lots of cameras or what have you to monitor the region, you can let anybody in the country anytime you want. And there's lots of tunnels that go in the United States from these areas. So that should be something that Trump looks into. Why he's only added an additional 78 miles is beyond me. I mean, we have to understand the long game of this, folks. The next time a Democratic government takes over, they are going to allow illegal aliens to come in again. They'll say Trump was racist. How dare he do this? Anyone should come in. We saw these sentiments coming from Boston Mayor Michelle Wu earlier this week. It's like everybody has a legal right to enter the United States. Well, I'm sorry for her, unfortunately. It doesn't vibe with federal immigration law or the Constitution, by the way. It's completely asinine. But this is how they feel. Anyone that wants to come in should come in. And that's what Biden and Harris did. And as a result, you saw 12 to 20 million illegals come in the country. So if you have a physical barrier in the way, barbed wire, high fences, secure, cameras on them, cement foundations under them so you can't dig, that would deter a lot of people from coming in the United States. It would stop a lot of people. Now, what is that administration going to spend 4 years trying to dismantle a border wall? We saw the Biden administration selling off pieces of it, for God's sake. They were just sitting in the desert. Trump needs to get on this. He needs to finish it. We got about 1,000 miles more to go. I know it's a hell of a distance. But we could do this. We could do this. And we should do this. And that, again, that would just create our sovereignty to be, obviously, more intact. It would prevent illegal aliens from coming and going. It wouldn't be easy like it has been for quite some time. So again, I applaud the Trump administration for the record low milestone that they reached. It's good. We want to see that. But we've got to understand there's 55 million, roughly 45 to 50, I should say, million illegals assumed to be inside the United States right now. There's about 55 million expired visa holders that come into the country legally that are still here. You add those two numbers together, folks, you got a lot of people that don't belong here. Secure the border, keep it secure, keep it funded, secure a barrier to make it extremely difficult to enter the country no matter what. And it doesn't matter if you have a Democrat in office. It's going to be much, much harder to let people in the country. And, Trump, he's been good on this issue, by and large, with as far as the apprehending of illegal aliens. But this article in the Gateway Pundit gave me some cause for concern. I don't understand where he's going with this. It says here, President Donald Trump signals shift for deportations Feds will enter sanctuary cities only if mayors ask and are invited. So he sat down with NBC Nightly News, and I don't know why he's taking this stance. He ran on mass deportations of illegal aliens. Now he's changing the script, though, after what took place in Minneapolis and Operation Metro Search. We're seeing protests in many different blue cities, as one can imagine. But the president revealed moving forward that the federal immigration enforcement will largely enter Democrat sanctuary cities only if these mayors want this to happen. Why would he do this? There's absolutely no reason why he should do this. He ran on the fact that, hey, we're going to find illegal aliens, we're going to deport them because they have no jurisdiction to be here. That's following federal immigration law. There's nothing illegal about doing that at all. So when I look at this, when I hear this, I say to myself, what is President Trump doing? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would he change script all of a sudden? We've had protests before. By the way, we're seeing lots of kids leaving high school now to protest several times a week now, causing chaos there. I'm glad they're learning something, right? Anyways, here's President Trump. I'll let you hear him directly. Let's take a listen.
So I want to be clear because it sounds like there is a shift in immigration enforcement here, that there's going to be a shift after Minneapolis. What should Americans expect going forward?
Well, one thing I say to my people, we do a good job, we don't get credit for it. I say they have to ask and they have to say please. When a city is
who
going
has to ask and who has to say please?
Or the governor, I don't want to go and force ourselves into a city, even if their numbers are terrible. Like, for instance, I got a call from Jeff Landry, governor of Louisiana. He said, we have a big problem. Could you go in and help us with well, let's see, certain sections. I mean, to be honest with you, certain sections of the state, beyond their famous, beautiful city, certain sections of the state. We have done, not only in New Orleans, we've done a really great job in Louisiana, but I was called. I want to be called. Chicago, we could solve the Chicago crime.
Well, on that question, which cities are you headed to next?
We have 5 cities that we're looking at very strongly, but we want to be invited.
We want to be invited. So let me ask you this. If, for example, in a sanctuary city like Minneapolis or San Francisco or LA or New York City, if they say, hey, you know what, we don't want you here. We're not going to let you carry out and conduct federal immigration law, you're going to say, okay, we're going to pack up and leave. Why would we do this? Why are Republicans? Why do we do this? I'm very confused by this. Why would Republicans just totally kowtow to Democrats when we have both the House, the Senate, the White House, and the Supreme Court? We are not breaking the law by issuing detainers on illegal aliens. We're just not. Now, I have concerns about how we're conducting some of these raids. I am. You know this. I've talked about this in the past. Everything should be done with due process. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm fine with even reforming some things ICE do. I think they should always have identification on them present. I think they should have a warrant when they enter a house. I don't think they should just be going to various locations and asking people to claim that they're U.S. citizens. I don't believe in that. But this idea that we're just going to say, oh, you know what, we want to be invited. Maybe he's saying this just to say this. I don't know. That's completely a 180 from where he was a year ago. And again, what does this prove to us? That you're just simply going to do exactly what the Democrats want? Then what's the point of electing you? What's the point of electing Republicans to the House and Senate if we're just simply going to kowtow to the Democratic demands? Maybe he's trying to quell the environment right now. He sees the protests springing up. I don't know. But I told you before, when Tom Homan said, we'll take out those 700, that gave the green light to these protesters that all they have to do is show up, cause some chaos, get in their way, and they will capitulate to us. That's not the message you want to send at a time like this. And by the way, this article on Fox News says Minneapolis mayor avoids question on opposing Obama-era immigration policy now pushed by President Trump. Oh, Jacob Fry, what are you doing to us? All right. It says here he was avoiding answering why he opposes a federal immigration measure once used by President Barack Obama, obviously a Democrat, and now pushed by President Trump, a Republican, during an interview with CNN on Wednesday. Now, the mayor continued to push back against what he called coercion from President Trump's administration regarding immigration enforcement. But the interviewer pointed out that some of the policies supported by conservatives were previously implemented by the Obama administration. Yeah. Well, again, the reason why ICE agents are wearing masks is, not because they want to, it's because they're worried about being doxxed. They're worried about being harassed. They're worried about people like Eric Swalwell, who are running for governor of California, saying you're not going to work in California, you're not going to be able to be a police officer in California, all these different things that are being touted, that are ridiculous too, by the way. They're going to come after you. They don't want this to happen to themselves or their families. And it's the climate created by the Democrats, people like Jacob Fry, people like Tim Walz in Minnesota, that are adding to, obviously, this violence that we're seeing, an uptick of over 1,300% on ICE agents just in the last year. But yet none of this took place under Joe Biden, did it? None of this took place under Barack Obama. Do you remember any protest at that time? I don't. I remember there was an attack on, obviously, police officers. That was big under the Obama administration. That's when Black Lives Matter got formed. You saw the presence greater of Antifa at the time. But why is it that Jacob Fry could answer the question? Well, because, again, it was because he's playing partisan politics. And just so we're clear on all this, under the same Obama administration that he loves so much, of the roughly 6 million people, roughly, give or take, illegal aliens that were deported under the Obama administration, 75 to 83% had zero due process given to them. They didn't see a judge. They didn't have any day in court. None of that. Yet, why were there no riots? Why was there no protesting among the Democrats? Well, I think the answer is pretty simple. Because these are not organic. These are put into place to, again, intimidate, to cause chaos in the streets, obviously to make President Trump look bad. But again, these are not organic. That's what it comes down to. These people are paid to be there. They're paid to act how they act. We've seen this before. And this is something that continues on, for some reason, only when President Trump was president of the United States. For some reason. Nobody could figure out why. Well, that's why. We see the money coming in from the Open Society by Soros, the Tides Foundation, the Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, all these. And the reason why Jacob Fry has no response is because, well, he wasn't supposed to be outraged at that point. It's all a script, folks. All a script. I'm fine with having it lawful, obviously. I want it to be lawful. I follow the Constitution. I've spoken out against it before these riots even took place. There should always be a warrant served. It should always be that way. There should always be due process. I'm fine with that. But what I'm not fine with is this intimidation coming from the left, these attacks that are taking place time and time again to go after ICE agents who are carrying out federal immigration law. It's a very hostile environment. You can see this is ramped up by the Democrats. Their rhetoric is causing this, by and large. And again, it's very sickening to see that public schools that should be educating children today are allowing them to skip class to go out in the streets with vulgar signs, with vulgar chants to, again, speak out against the federal government. Absolutely absurd. Can you imagine if President Trump had them come out in support of what ICE was doing during school? I think Democrats would lose their head. Don't you? I think so. Yep. Well, again, this is how the Democrats work. This is how they operate, folks. It's the same old script. It never, ever changes. And it never gets any better, does it? So, my words to President Trump, do not kowtow. Tom Homan, do not kowtow. Do your job. That's what you were elected to do. We want you to carry out federal immigration law. By the way, 63% of Americans agree with it. They want to see deportations of illegal aliens. That means it goes over from Republican to Democrat to independent alike. That's what they want to see. Folks, thanks for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Hope you learned something from the show. Hope you'll share with some friends. Keep your minds and bodies sharp. Stay prepped. And I'll see you tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good. Stay busy. God bless.